So the Mendel used to say an anecdote, and I heard this from his grandson, Rabbi Osher, that a new neshama is descending into this world, and on its way down, it meets a neshama which just finished its mission in this world, and they meet in the middle. The neshama that's coming down is asking, "How was it in the world of deceit? What could you tell me about it?" So the neshama says it was amazing. In this world, for a few shkalim, for a few dollars, you could buy mezuzahs, you could take talis and tefillin, and to draw down infinite holiness. So the neshama is coming down and says, "Wow, that's amazing." And then the neshama, which is ascending back up, sort of cools the other neshama. It says, "Yes, for a few dollars you can, but by the time you earn those few dollars, your neshama already has to leave." This in itself touches upon a prayer that we say every single morning after we wash our hands for the second time, and we start the morning blessings. We begin the morning blessing with a declaration: Hashem, my God, the soul that you've endowed with me is pure. You've created it, you formed it, you blew it into me, and you're destined to take it back from me. So the question is that why, if Hashem is destined to take the neshama back, what's the point of bringing it down in the first place? That by the time it starts figuring things out, and by the time it's able to earn a few dollars in order to do the mitzvahs, or the playtime is up and has to go back up. So Chassidus explains that in this world, we enclose ourselves with a protection suit that allows us to remain in order to be able to connect after the neshama leaves. The neshama has a certain suit that is able to connect to the holiness and to the light that is found in the world to come. So let's explain. Everything in this world has its own limitation of how much it could withstand, how much energy it could absorb or harness, etc., etc. And if you're going to overload it with light, with energy, not only you're not going to build it up, you're actually going to overwhelm it and destroy it. For example, if we take our cell phones and try to charge it directly to the main power source of the city, not only is it not going to endow with energy, it's going to blow it up instantly. It's going to burn it up. In order to be able to receive from the main power source, there has to be several transformers, minimizing the energy that's flowing from the main power plant to the outlet in our walls, in order to match up the type of energy that can be harnessed. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So too, if a person looks directly at the sun, not only he is not going to be able to enjoy the light, it could, chas v'shalom, hurt his eyesight. And in order to look at the sun, we would need sunshades. That augments the direct rays and allows us to be able to see it in a way that our eyes can tolerate it. And so too, when it comes to the connection between the Creator and the creation. When Moshe Rabbeinu asked from Hashem to show him a ray of the Shekhinah, in other words, after Hashem pardoned the Jewish people from the sin of the golden calf, Moshe says, "If I found favor in your eyes, show me now your glory." And what Chassidus explains says, "Show me a ray of the Shekhinah." And Hashem says, impossible, because no human being is able to see me and tolerate it and continue living. In other words, it would create a situation where Moshe could have overdosed. When a human being when the Jewish people were by Mount Sinai, and they heard the first of the 10 commandments from Hashem directly, for every word that Hashem said, their soul left them. And Hashem had to revive us and bring us back to life from death for each word that He said. Because Hashem is infinite and is unlimited. And in contrast to him, there's nothing really exists and nothing is real, and everything is what it says ein ve'efes, nothing and zero. If Hashem would reveal His full holiness and reveal Himself in His completion, then all of creation would have ceased to exist. After this, we have a question. Our sages say that in the world of truth, in other words, the world to come, the neshama in heaven, that is, the neshama sits and receives and takes pleasure from the divine ray of the Shekhinah. If the Shekhinah is able to reveal itself in the world of truth, in other words, in heaven, how is it possible that the neshama is going to be able to tolerate it without completely becoming extinguished? For this, Chassidus explains that the neshama requires a special garment that protects it. This is a special holiness that the neshama is able to withstand, and it allows the neshama to be able to contain and internalize this immense holiness that's revealed in heaven. Performing the mitzvahs endows the neshama with this special suit. When we do a mitzvah, what do we say? Asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, that you sanctified us with your mitzvot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what does that mean? What does it mean He sanctified with Asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav? He sanctified us with His mitzvot. So Chassidus explains that Hashem takes from His infinite holiness and concealed and pushed it and put it into the mitzvah itself. So each mitzvah in itself has a marking of infinity within it. When these type of mitzvahs you're able to buy with a few dollars, as Mendel said, and with this Hashem gave us the opportunity to sanctify ourselves with His holiness while we are living physical lives, as the Torah says, "V'chai b'hem," that you should live with them, with the mitzvot. And the simple meaning, "V'chai b'hem," means that if ever there is a need to if Chaz v'shalom is a threat on a person's life, if he fasts or so on and so forth, then he has to live. The mitzvahs cannot be the source of the opposite of life, but rather life. So if someone's life is in jeopardy, we set aside the mitzvahs. But the deeper means v'chai b'hem is that they literally give you life. The mitzvot literally give you life. And the life we're talking about is the infinite life that is available to us from Hashem directly. So this this holiness that is endowed with the mitzvahs, and when we perform the mitzvahs, becomes a garment which allows us to absorb the holiness, the infinite holiness that is found in Gan Eden. If the neshama comes to Gan Eden without this protective garment, because they weren't occupied with mitzvahs while they were alive, then it's compared to an astronaut that goes into outer space without a spacesuit, or to a diver who goes into the water without the proper equipment, or a submarine without its walls. It won't be able to survive that environment. This idea is embedded deep into the sin of the tree of knowledge. In regarding the pasuk that says, "And they knew that they were naked after they ate from the tree of knowledge," Rashi says that they had one mitzvah. In other words, the mitzvah not to eat from the tree of knowledge. And they unfortunately violated that mitzvah. In other words, the one mitzvah that they had was going to give them the garment to be able to withstand and absorb and internalize the light that was found in Gan Eden in that moment. That was the purpose of that mitzvah for them. And once they ate from the tree of knowledge, they realized that they were naked. Naked means from that garment that they needed in order to be able to remain in Gan Eden, to tolerate the light that was over there. And so by eating from the tree of knowledge, they sort of threw away their one garment, and therefore they couldn't stand there anymore. It's like a deep sea diver who throws away his equipment. He can't remain in the water anymore, because if he remains, he's going to die. So too, the Adam and Chava needed that garment of the mitzvah of not eating from the tree of knowledge to be able to stay there. If so, our function in this world is to enclose ourselves with this garment. And the Zohar says that in every single day that a person is alive, he has to enclose himself with a garment of that day. That each particular day has the garment that belongs to that day in compared to Torah mitzvot. There's a Maimon from the Rebbe. The Rebbe explains there's a pasuk that is this week's Parsha. And that is, V'Avram Zaken Ba Bayamim. And Avraham is old and he came with days. He says that every single day that Avraham was alive, every day he served Hashem to the fullest. And to a certain extent, that was one of his greatest accomplishments, that every single second was utilized correctly. But there's a question that the Rebbe asks in the discourse. If a human being is meant to put on tefillin, let's just say, 1,000,000 times throughout their lifetime, then why not just take about a half a year off, and then spend whole days put on tefillin, and then eventually you'll get to a number million within the year or so, whatever it is. You spend the entire day taking it off, putting it on. So by the end of the year, or so whatever it is, we would have put on tefillin 1,000,000 times. But the Rebbe explains that the mitzvot are not just aloof from time and space, but they're intertwined with time and space. And each day in itself has the mitzvot which are connected to that day, that when the person performs the mitzvah, in connection to the day, in connection to the place, that becomes the garment for their soul. So it's not enough just to get it out of the way so the rest of our lives we don't have to, but rather every day in itself is intrinsically connected to the mitzvot. And so there are mitzvot that are connected for Shabbat. There are mitzvot that are connected to Sunday through Friday. There are mitzvot which are connected to holidays on a particular year, at a particular date, at a particular moment, in a particular locale, with particular people. And all of that comes together to create that garment. It's not just the act in itself. It's everything that is intertwined with the performance of the mitzvah. So Hashem gives a certain amount of days for each person. And what are those days of a person's life marked by? In other words, what measures a person's life, and we know that, as David HaMelech says on this is part of Zion, the seventh day of the month, in part of the Tehillim of the seventh day of the month, David HaMelech asks Hashem, tell me the measure of my life, what is it? That every single person has an exact measure. And how is that measure allotted? In accordance to the garments that soul needs in order to move further in the spiritual world after 120 years. If one day passed by without the person enclosing himself in that garment or herself in that garment, in other words, that they are missing the mitzvot of that day, then their soul is forever missing something, because that day will never come back. And that opportunity will never come back. Maybe they'll be able to do the mitzvah, let's just say they miss Shema, so they'll do it another day. But that particular day is going to be hollow, is going to be empty and devoid of the garment, of the light. According to this, the Zohar explains what we just said, V'Avram Zaken Baba Yamim, Avram was old and he came with days, that every single one of his days, Avraham, Baruch Hashem, performed the mitzvot which connected to that time, to that place, and the locale that he was in order to create that garment for his soul. And therefore, when he was old, it says he came with days. In other words, he came, what did he bring with him? He brought with him every single day of his life. Every day of his life mattered. Every day of his life was utilized to the full extent possible. So there are people who get old, but they don't bring days with them. In other words, they have whole days and whole weeks and whole months where we just like went for triviality, with nothing really important being done. The Baal Shem Tov said that his father taught him that there shouldn't be a day that he doesn't do good deeds. And so the Baal Shem Tov encouraged that every single day a person goes out of their way to do good deeds, the Torah and mitzvot that is available to them to the best of their ability. That's exactly what he just said over here. We all know the famous story of Rabbi Elazar ben Dorduya. Gemara speaks about it. We spoke about it in several classes. He was a person that was considered to be an expert sinner. That there wasn't a lady of the night that he didn't visit. And in his old age, after living a life of partying and so on and so forth, he came to understand that he wasted his entire life. And he began to be very, very remorseful over it. And because he was so remorseful, as it says, he cried for 3 days straight, his soul left him. The Gemara says, when he passed away, as soon as he passed away, a heavenly voice descended from above and declared, "Fortunate are you, Rabbi Elazar ben Dorduya, that you are invited to the world to come." In other words, in 1 second, he was able to radically change his disposition from one extreme to another. He went from being an expert sinner to the epitome of a Baal Tshuva in 1 instant. The Gemara says, at that moment when he passed away, in describing this, Rabbi Yehuda ben Anasi, Yehuda the prince, cried and says, there are those who are able to purchase or acquire their world in a few years, which is the standard, and there are those who are able to acquire their life in the world to come in 1 instant, like in this case. Over here, the Arizal asks a question, which really drives each one of us to really do a healthy introspection. The Arizal asks, being that his entire life he wasn't occupied with Torah mitzvot, rather with trivialities and sinfulness, then how does he come to the world to come? And why did they call him Rebbe? Because the Baskol didn't call him Elazar ben Dorduya. At that moment, after he cried and his neshama left, the heavenly voice says, Rabbi Elazar ben Dorduya. He called him Rabbi. The guy was a sinner his entire life. Where does he get the title of Rabbi from? And also, if he didn't live a life of Torah mitzvot, how could he go to the world to come? He has no garments. He has no garments to be able to harness the light without becoming extinguished. The Arizal explains, this is what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi meant when he says there are those who acquire their world in several years, and there are those who are able to do it in 1 instant. Rabbi Elazar ben Dorduya was actually, the Arizal says, a reincarnation of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was a high priest who served for 80 years of his life. And the very last year of his life, something went into his mind and he left all of Judaism. he left the standard Judaism. And unfortunately, he left. He went off. When the neshama of Yochanan Kohen Gadol went to the world to come, there was a big problem now. On one hand, the neshama had 80 years of garments, 80 years of holiness. He was a Kohen Gadol and served in the Beis HaMikdash and entered the Kodesh HaKodashim and performed all the mitzvot and so on and so forth. Then technically he earned the world to come. He earned to go to heaven. On the other hand, at the end of his life, he dropped everything. So how do you reconcile these two? For this, he had to come back again and reincarnate into Elazar ben Dorduya, who spent his entire life sinning. And his tikkun was that the very last moment he'll make tshuva, in order to complete that which Yochanan Kohen Gadol messed up. That the last moment of his life, he threw everything off. So once Elazar ben Dorduya was able to do the tshuva at the end of his life, then all of the garments of Yochanan Kohen Gadol was transferred to him because he was the same soul. Make sense? Mm-hmm. From this, we have to understand. We have to internalize that we shouldn't spend our days for nothing. That, in other words, we should think one day we'll get our acts together, and one day I'll start keeping this, and one day I'll start doing this. But if our souls descended into this world in order to gain these garments through the learning of the Torah and through performing the mitzvot, then obviously you have to earn money. Obviously you have to live life in this physical world. But don't waste time. That by the time you're ready to perform the mitzvah, it's time to come back already, because then you would have missed the very reason for why the neshama came down here.